Let's be honest, we are all drowning in complex information. I mean, think about it. You've got dense project requirements, super technical manuals, endless research papers. It is just an overwhelming amount of text. So today, we're going to dive into how new AI tools are helping us not just read all this stuff, but to actually understand it.
And look, the stakes for getting this right are incredibly high. This quote from a study by Robert Glass just says it all. Most IT errors come from misunderstood requirements. When that happens, projects don't just go over budget, a lot of them fail completely. So this isn't about convenience, it's literally the difference between success and failure.
So that really brings us to the big question for today. With all these documents piling up around us, how can AI possibly help us dig our way out and actually find some clarity? Well, let's find out.
Okay, so let's talk about the real cost of this information overload. Because this isn't just some abstract headache, right? It's the real-world source of project delays and budget blowouts in countless fields, from the apps on your phone to the traffic systems that get you home. Let's look at a couple of quick examples.
So in software development, you've got teams trying to juggle hundreds of these things called user stories. Each one is just a little, short, text-based requirement. Simple enough on its own, but when you get hundreds of them together, they become this tangled, confusing mess. Meanwhile, you've got a traffic engineer who's facing a critical system failure, and they have to dig through a massive, highly technical manual just to find one single answer. Two very different fields, but it's the same core problem. Unstructured text is slowing them down, and it's costing them a ton of time.
So, how do we fix this? Well, the answer isn't some single magical AI. It's actually a powerful toolkit that lets us build custom AI applications, apps that can read and reason about our own documents. And that toolkit is called Langchain. Okay, let's dive into this.
Honestly, the best way to think about Langchain is as a Lego set for building with AI. It gives you all the essential building blocks you need, ways to connect to powerful language models, tools to access your own data, and the chains to link them all together, which lets you create something entirely new and specific to your problem.
So, building with Langchain really just boils down to 3 core steps. First, you connect to a powerful AI model like GPT-4. Second, and this is the important part, you ground that model in your specific data, your documents, your databases. And third, you build an application that puts that AI to work for you, whether that's a specialized chatbot or a deep analysis tool.
All right, so let's see how this actually works in the real world. Our first case study comes from a master's thesis at Brandenburg Technical University, where a researcher decided to tackle that exact problem of tangled software requirements that we talked about a minute ago. The project started with just a jumbled mess of these user stories, but the core idea was, well, it was pretty revolutionary. Stop seeing them as a simple list and start seeing them as a map. The goal was to use AI to read all of these different stories and then automatically build a visual graph of connections, showing exactly how every part of the system relates to everything else.
Now, this map has a technical name. It's called a knowledge graph. But really, the best way to think of it is like a GPS for your data. In this GPS, the nodes are like your destinations. Key concepts like a user or personal data. And the edges are the roads that connect them, the relationships like wants to access. All of a sudden, a flat document becomes this rich, interconnected network you can navigate.
So how'd they build it? Well, they created a custom tool using Langchain. This tool reads each user story and then uses an AI model to intelligently pull out the key nodes, the persona, which is the who, the action, or what they do, and the entity, what they affect. It also figures out the relationships connecting them. And the best part? The result is automatically saved into a special graph database, building that project GPS, story by story, with zero manual effort.
That is an incredible way to see the big picture. But what if your problem is the exact opposite? What if you don't need a map of the whole system, but you need an expert guide to help you find one tiny specific answer buried in a mountain of text?
That brings us to our second case study. This one comes from a student project at Virginia Tech, and it tackles that opposite problem. It was built to help those traffic engineers we mentioned earlier. You know, the ones who are drowning in those massive technical manuals?
Their challenge was clear and it was urgent. When an engineer has a specific question, like, say, how to model a certain type of intersection, they need an answer right now, not after they've spent an hour skimming hundreds of pages of dense technical jargon.
The solution was an AI chatbot built using a really cool technique called Retrieval-Augmented Generation, or RAG for short. It's a pretty simple 3-step process. First, the engineer just asks a question in plain English.
Second, the system uses Langchain to instantly search the entire manual and find only the most relevant passages. And finally, it feeds only those specific passages to the AI and tells it, use this and only this to generate a direct answer.
So basically, a RAG chatbot is like having an expert librarian. It's like someone who has already read, indexed, and memorized every single page of the manual, and they're just sitting there waiting to find exactly what you need, instantly. It's pretty amazing. So we've seen two very different problems, right? One was about the big picture, the other was about a single tiny detail, but when you start to look at the solutions together, they point to a much bigger idea about the future of how we work with information.
Let's just put it all together here. The software project needed to see the entire system, so it used a knowledge graph to build a GPS. The engineering project needed to find a specific answer, so it used RAG to build an expert guide. Two different goals, two different methods, but look there at the bottom. Both were built using the same flexible Langchain toolkit.
And that right there is the crucial point. This AI revolution, it isn't really about generic chatbots at all. It's about giving us the power to transform our own static, locked-up documents into intelligent, interactive tools. Tools that are custom-built to solve our specific problems and help us work better.
And that leaves us with a really fascinating final thought. We've just seen AI learn to read our most complex technical documents. So if it can do that, what's next? What kind of breakthroughs become possible when AI can not only read, but truly understand the accumulated knowledge of an entire field, or an entire company, or maybe even an entire library?